All right, we are back for another round of the Artist Interview Success Series. And I am here with Deeann Rieves, who is someone who I have been around for a long time. And I love this girl. She is so amazing and great. And I asked her to do this interview with me because I know that she is super passionate about helping other artists to reach their goals as well. And so I thought that this would be a really good fit. So Deeann, do you just want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about your business.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always fun to hang out with you. Any excuse to do something and collaborate is always good. I'm Deeann. I am a fine artist, a painter. I do mixed media paintings. I use collage and machine embroidery on painted papers and then use the papers as collage and create abstracts, figurative work, abstract landscapes, and abstract florals. And I've been in business for like over 10 years, but I would say over maybe the last 6 to 8 have been more serious than those beginning years. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I have 2 little girls. They are 5 and 2.5. So that, is a balance daily.
It definitely plays a part.
Yeah. And this past year, for the first time ever, my friend Nikki and I launched a mastermind group for artists. So that was a new fun role to play as a mentor to those artists. I had done portfolio reviews and a few coaching mentor type things before that. So that's been a new thing this year. But yeah, mostly just painting and selling my paintings on my website. And I do a few fine art festivals a year. So like in-person type shows.
Yeah. And I remember last year when it was uber COVID-y, you did basically you couldn't do all of your festivals that you were doing. So you did one on Instagram and that went really well for you. I thought that was super cool. Good way to, go around what's going on in the world and have some creative, fun ideas to play with.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was my mom or my assistant that suggested that. And I needed a new booth photo for applying to shows. And to do that, you really have to set up like at home so that, because you can't take your booth photo at a show, people are like walking by and stuff, and you need like a tripod and all the junk. So I wanted to set up my tent in our driveway. And then I was like, well, that would be perfect. I should just do like an Instagram live. And yeah, it worked out really well.
And last year, you had a major milestone even with COVID. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah. Last year, I had my first 6-figure year as an artist, which was huge. In December, I was like, I'm so close. I like kicked butt till I got there.
I remember talking to you and you were like, I'm so tired, but
yeah.
You did it.
It was really exciting, a big deal. Do you want me to talk about why I think that happened?
Yeah, let's start there. And then I'll ask you those 3 questions I sent you and that will be good.
Perfect.
So tell me about this year that you had. Why do you think that it went so well for you, even with all the things that could have gone wrong?
Yeah. So before COVID and everything, my word for the year was intention. And I really felt in the past, I was always sort of like flying by the seat of my pants, like randomly would be like, oh crap, I haven't released anything in a few months and I have some paintings going. So I need to just like release them. And then I would stress and I don't know, I didn't plan ahead enough. And so in 2020, like in January, I mapped out the whole year and all my collections. I mean, some things shifted here and there, but I was like, I want to do 4 releases, or maybe it was 3. And the fact that I didn't have shows distracting me, I think really helped. Now I did go back to doing shows, the ones that didn't get canceled this year, because I do think that, like, I enjoy them. I enjoy the in-person connection and finding homes for the paintings in person instead of just shipping them out. But also, a lot of my sales were to people in the cities where I do shows. So it was
Yeah.
like, I had a couple emails that were like, hey, we were going to get a big piece from you this year. Can we do a commission? So my commissions were up, but I just feel like I was able to set intention for the year and stick to it, and in a calm way. Whereas this year, just adding in a couple of shows, I already was like, I feel like I'm winging it again, because at a show, I need a variety of work and a variety of sizes. Right. Whereas when you're selling online, it works better to have, I do one body of work and, 2 or 3 sizes in that, all abstract. So I did a show in September and I had just released florals. So my booth was like a lot of florals. And I was mad at myself that I didn't have enough abstracts, but I didn't have the time. But also technically for shows, like if I applied with abstract work, that's what they expect. So the pressure is actually real that you should display what you applied with, even though they're really looking at the caliber of your work in an application, but still. So yeah, I feel like in 2020, I was able to just really plan ahead and do the thing where you work backwards. It's okay. If I'm going to release this week, then everything needs to be photographed in an ideal world the week before, which means everything needs to be finished by the week before. And if I'm going to have 18 pieces in the collection, how many weeks will that take me? If I finish to a week, or I don't know.
Yeah. Does that kind of planning work well for you? I mean, it sounds like it does, but for some people it doesn't. So I'm just curious.
It helps me, but I always end up, and I'm still trying to figure out a good balance for myself with mapping it out. Like I've been thinking about, okay, this year I felt a little like I'm winging it again. Like I need to go back to really setting more intention, but also giving myself, like it takes 3 or 4 weeks for me to really feel like I'm getting in the flow with a series.
Yeah.
But then once I'm in the flow, I can bust them out. The issue is while I'm busting them out, balancing marketing it, because that's when you also have to be like, really on top of it with marketing. And I feel like I've noticed a pattern that the pieces that I finish right at the very end of a collection, I haven't talked about as much because I was like hurrying and squeezing them in. And I haven't posted about them as much. And if they're a big piece, they don't usually sell.
Interesting.
Whereas sometimes when I bust it right before a show and finish a big painting, it's the one that sells because,
you're probably the most excited about it. And you're like,
right.
This one, I just finished it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think in 2020, I was just more intentional and really it's funny. I think I thought I was intentional before that. But then
I feel like we always are, no matter what it is, we're always growing in it. I feel like I have good life balance, but then a week will pass where I do it better. And I'm like, oh no, now I'm good at it. And same with, words of the year and
yeah.
all of that.
Even I remember, 4 or 5 years ago being like, why can't I sell out, a collection? But like I hadn't really launched my work like that. And I feel like I was doing what everyone else was doing, but then once I actually started doing it more intentionally, it did work more successfully for me. Just, the intention of posting about each piece as it's in progress and then as it's getting its finishing touches, and then groups of them finished together or bedroom or above a couch or something,
Well, and part of that too is that you have done it and then done it again and then done it again, and you've learned this works, this doesn't work, I can fit this in, I can't fit this in, and you're you have a pattern, and it will continue to be a better and better pattern. I think the more releases that you do. But I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that you are very intentional, and I really respect that about you. And some people can do that really well. Others need a little bit more fly by the seat of your pants, but regardless of which way you go on that spectrum, it still is a matter of that practice to find out what's working best for you.
Right. Well, and it's intention and planning ahead, sort of the way I do my work. Like I sketch out my pieces before I get started. But once I get started, I'm not like on this tight leash for that sketch. I'm going to do whatever I want. But I like having the sketch before. So I like planning ahead, even if I can't even tell you how many times I've been like, okay, I'm going to only have 2 sizes in this collection. They're going to be 18 by 24 and 30 by 40. And then I start working and I make 24 by 30s. And I'm like, this wasn't one of the sizes I said I was going to do. And then I'm like, okay, I'll do 3 sizes. And then I end up doing 4 or something. I just, sometimes, yeah, you're going to have the spontaneous change the launch date because something happens in your life, or change how many pieces you're going to release because you haven't had the time you thought you were going to have, which is what I'm doing now. Like I used to always release, my goal was always like 30. I don't know why I always had that in my head. But I've noticed that a lot of the artists who release online in this style release smaller numbers. I think 30 still works for me because I do shows. And if I were to only release 12 and sell them all, then at the next show, I would have nothing. Right. So I tend to sell about half, and then I use the others for shows and for the artist collective that I'm in. But yeah, so sometimes it's adjusting from those plans, but the fact that you've even thought about it, mapped it out for yourself of, four releases gives you 3 months for each release. What would that look like time-wise for the year with holidays and when you're busy in your personal life or whatever? Yeah. It's going to help if you plan ahead a bit.
I'm a huge fan of planning. I love planning, but then I usually blow it up. Like 95% of the time I blow up all my plans, but just having been able to get them out of my head and onto paper is extremely useful to me. It's like a calming effect. But then I can open it up for, okay, now where is the inspiration going to come from? What do I really want to be doing, and how can I make that work within what I have set? Yeah, that's a really fun way of working for me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about specifically last year, you hitting that 100,000 mark. So other people can, one, believe it's possible for them, but also get a little bit of how to mindset actionable strategy to do so as well. So my first question is, what has been the biggest mindset shift needed in order to get to where you are now, from 10 years ago to not taking it very seriously to last year breaking that 6-figure mark for you?
I think the biggest mindset shift for me, years ago in Atlanta, I had coffee with an artist, Michelle Armis. I really respected her career, and she was so nice. And at the time, honestly, it was before Squarespace was like a common thing. And I didn't have a Squarespace site. I had more of a like portfolio, like the way in art school, they were like, you make a portfolio website and you
HTML kind of deal.
And you have your CV and you apply to group exhibitions and you ship the work and they ship it back and you build up this prestigious CV of art shows. More power to you if that's what you want to do. But I was making no money. Yeah, I was excited and I loved going to like gallery openings in Nashville or like driving work to Knoxville or whatever. But then we moved to Atlanta and I was like applying to stuff like that and just getting nowhere. And Michelle was like, why don't you have a shopping cart on your website? And I was like, I didn't say this to her because she had it, but I was thinking, I just think, isn't that kind of tacky? Because that's how they taught us in school. Why would you ever do that? And I remember Britt Bass, who I ended up getting to know too in Atlanta. I remember her calling her work collections, and I was thinking like fashion, because in school it was a series. So it was just
Mhm.
sort of like, okay, let's talk in this language that people know, and let's add a shopping cart on your website because that makes it more accessible. Because Michelle was like, instead of getting an email that says, "Hi, I'm interested in the piece entitled blah. Is it available and what is the price?" She was like, instead of that, you need to get an email that says, "This painting sold, ship it." And she was like, that happens to me, all the time. And she had an assistant, and I was like, I want that. I would love that. And she was like, think about how many people don't email to ask the price because they're like, what if it's, too much and they're embarrassed, or it's just, transparency in that kind of thing has become the norm, which I'm so happy about over the last however many years. So I got a Squarespace website and made it a shop, like where you could have a shopping cart, and then started to sort of think of my work in like collections, which wasn't a huge shift because I had definitely worked in like series sort of. But that same year, I did art show at a school, like a fundraiser. Like a lot of the schools in the South, like private schools, will do a fundraiser art show, and you give 30% of the profit to the school, which at the time I was thinking, well, that's great because galleries take 50. And I did one of those shows in Atlanta, and it was great. And I met tons of really nice artists, and all of them were like, you should try outdoor stuff. And I was thinking, again, ugh, tacky, no. And they were like, you can make good money. And I was like, really? And it was a joke at the beginning. Me and my husband would laugh because literally every person I talked to about outdoor shows said, yeah, I make about 5,000 a show. And I was like, at the time thinking like, what? How? Like, I never sell anything when I do a show. But they also said everything you need to buy costs about $5,000. So I was like, why is everything 5,000? And then one artist said it's not that much. She was like, if you get this tent and these walls, you don't have to buy an RV, like you can, or a trailer, like these walls roll up and they're mesh, and so you can put them in your car. And the tent and the walls is like $2,200, and then you need to buy a little table and a director's chair and start applying to shows. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do that. So I remember this being like a huge conversation between me and my husband. Can I spend $2,500 to like maybe try to do outdoor shows? But luckily, since I was in Atlanta, which is such a big city, there's tons of outdoor shows I could apply to without having to think through like a hotel expense or travel expense.
Yeah, those add up too.
Right.
No,
But
you're good.
when I started to prepare for that first year that I got into, I don't remember how many it was that first year, maybe 3 shows or 4. I remember thinking, okay, I need 30 to 40 pieces in a variety of sizes. I need it to look pretty in the display. So like now I have this like graph paper that I have like my booth drawn out, and I try to make sure that the pieces are the same height across. Or I'll make a little vignette with a tall piece, and then the pieces on the side are like symmetrical or something. When I started to plan ahead for that kind of thing, and started to think, okay, I need 30 pieces. And then if I sell 5 or 6 and I have another show 3 weeks later, like I'm going to have to make 5 or 6 more. That year, just the quantity of making that much work for all those shows, I grew as an artist because I got out of my head a bit with, oh, this has to be like this gallery worthy, whatever. And they were still really nice pieces. Like, not to say that I was doing anything less than craftsmanship wise, but just the idea of making so much work, I just got in a better flow of working.
You got out of the perfectionism trap.
Yeah, or just like the pressure that you put on one painting. And while I was working on a big piece like that, I would start to make small pieces and practice and play and whatever. And I just got in a better headspace on working in a big collection like that. And then once the shows started, I got so much feedback from the people. I mean, yeah, you have the random people that are like, say stupid stuff, but not as many as the people who give you good advice. Or I noticed they would say, do you have anything that's vertical? Like all my pieces were horizontal. And I was like, ooh, okay. Note to self. Or they would say, do you have a pair? Or I was thinking I needed something, but I want it to be like framed or whatever. So just free feedback on everything I'm doing that I could consider. Like, obviously, I'm not going to follow everything.
And it wasn't just feedback from some random Joe Schmo. It was feedback from people who were looking at your work and interested and, cared enough to come into your booth and ask you these questions too.
Right. Yeah. So that year was a big risk. I spent all that money on my tent. I spent forever on my website trying to get my Squarespace website launched. And honestly, I didn't sell work off my website not significantly, for at least a year, maybe even 2. And about that same time, Instagram became a big thing. So it was like the perfect storm for me of like, I got Squarespace. I started really upping my game on Instagram to make it, like at the time, I think I had 600 followers. And I took Emily Jeffords had this little Instagram class that was like an hour long. It was like $25, which is so funny because now she's like amazing. But like she had this little Instagram Zoom. It wasn't Zoom. Zoom wasn't a thing, but some little video class. And I took it and I just started doing all of her advice. And by the end of that year, I have 5,000 followers, which, not to discourage anyone now because the algorithm's different. I don't think maybe you can jump from 600 to 5,000 in a year.
Maybe, but probably not the same way.
Probably not. And I remember thinking the next year, maybe by the end of next year, I'll have 10,000. And by the end of like February, I had 10,000. It was like just a snowball of, and that summer I had my first child. But Instagram was feeding me to people at that point. I wasn't doing as much of the hustling to get followers. But I remember other artists being like, how much time are you spending on this app? It's ridiculous. Now they were like, is it turning to sales? And at the time, I remember that year, like the time being like, not really, but now, yes. So I feel like everything takes time. Building your website and trying out different avenues of selling your work and finding your people on Instagram or on your mailing list. It just all takes a little longer than you think, but it does pay off when you keep doing the work.
Well, and even with, I know that the large following helps you as well, but I also know that you are very good at talking to people and networking and meeting people in your area and having coffee with people. And I feel like that is a huge way that you are able to create a lot of these sales, as well as, you do have a really big audience and that's so useful. But am I off base here? I feel like a lot of people that you sell to are people that you've had conversations with and maybe met in person, or they saw your work at the show, or, all these different little things that weave together to create the perfect storm for you.
Yeah. When I do my collection launches, I release to my email list first for a couple of hours. And that's usually when all the sales happen. And my email list, obviously, some people come from Instagram. Like pretty much every collection, I might be having, there's definitely been some where I was having 12 and 15 and 20 conversations with people in DMs. Last year when I was doing my figure collection, I was taking more of your advice at that time and was killing it on the DMs. Just in conversing back with them. Like when I first started the collection, I think you made a post about when someone says, I like that or that's pretty, ask them why instead of saying thank you. And I felt funny about doing that in my comments, but in my stories, it felt very natural. So,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning of the collection, it was amazing feedback because it was a new collection for me in that I hadn't done figures. Like I said at the beginning of our conversation, like basically I was doing abstract work for a while, but I always had this dream of rotating landscapes, florals, figures, and abstracts, but doing them all in the same style. And so it was the first time I was going to release a big figurative collection. And when I was starting to talk about it in my stories and people were like, "Ooh, I love that one," I would say, "What do you love about it?" "I'm just getting started on this collection. I'm still figuring out where I want it to go." And half the people said they liked that the girl had a bun in her hair. And I was like, okay, more buns. Like, show the top of her head more and make sure she has a messy bun. So as I was planning the next few like compositions, I made sure to include her messy bun. So that was funny. But like also just people would say things like, you know, that they liked. I get a lot the colors. They like the colors. So that let's see, why did I start talking about that? We were talking about, oh, you were saying that even though I have a big following, honestly, I think the big following is crap. Like my posts don't get seen by that many people. And so some of the people in my mastermind group, one of them has 1,600 followers, and she released a collection of 44 pieces and sold them all within like minutes. Wow. They were small. And but it was because she had this amazing story. She did all the right things. She talked about it for weeks. She built it up. It was a really gorgeous collection. And then I have there are artists that I know from shows and stuff who they might have 4,000 or 6,000 followers, and they sell out of their collections every time they release something. So the number doesn't mean all that much, even though I know it's easy to.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah, it makes you feel a little legit or something, but
the point being, if you don't have the huge following, it's fine. That's not going to make that big of a difference for you.
Right. As long as you're having those. I have sold better. My collections have sold better when I have been more intentional in DMs and with my mailing list. If I send an email, which I'm already kicking myself because I'm releasing a collection in a couple weeks and I haven't sent an email yet. It's on my list. If I send an email like 4 to 6 weeks before the collection to say, hey, this is what I'm going to work on next, make sure you're following along on Instagram. That usually goes better because they at least have it on their radar. Especially if you think if you're wanting to sell bigger pieces, like I sell a pretty good amount of bigger work. Like a lot of my friends who sell out of their collections, when you add up the number, it's not
about selling out, and it's not about how many you sold.
Right. So but if somebody's going to buy a big piece, they need to know a couple months beforehand that it's like on their radar. Okay, this is the price point. I'm going to spend $1,400 in a couple of months or whatever. So they can.
All right, Deann, you got homework when we hang up here.
What's my homework?
Your homework's to go send that email.
Yes.
Get it out.
I meant to send it at the beginning of October, but I had a show and I was just like chasing my tail. But yeah, I do need to send the email because even a couple weeks is better than nothing.
Yeah. Okay, so you might have already answered this question, but what do you think the one practical step that has helped you jump the furthest?
Yeah, I guess I did sort of answer that, didn't I? I mean, like,
my thought was maybe it was that you were intentional about planning it out, but it might be something else.
Yeah, I would say that's the most practical step I've taken in the last few years. Just planning ahead better. Because like I said, I think I thought I was doing what my, like the collection model or whatever, but I wasn't really.
Yeah.
Not in the way that I did in 2020. And it
Okay, let me ask you a different question then.
Okay.
What did you think that you were doing? How do I word this? You thought you were being intentional, but you weren't doing it as well. What was the difference between those two?
Well, on Instagram
responsibilities?
wise, I think I would think, oh, I've talked about this a lot. And I have a good friend who, like a while back, released a collection and then was like, I don't know why, more pieces didn't sell. And I looked and I couldn't find more than 6 or 7 posts about the collection. And, they, whatever the thing is about people need to see things however many times, 6 times or something.
I think it's gone up.
Yeah. I just feel like, so once I've picked a collection date launch and know the direction of the collection and it's best if you can title the collection or start talking about what it means to you with the title so that you can create like your unique hashtag for that collection. And then every post you post about it, you put that hashtag in the text so that if they click on that, they can see all your posts about that collection. And I try to make a story highlight too of like the collection that's happening. And so sometimes my call to action is join the mailing list. Sometimes it's take a look at the collection as it's unfolding in the story highlight, or look at this hashtag to see all the pieces in the collection so far. And my collections have done better when I end up having 30 some odd posts with that hashtag. And I've been talking about it for 4 to 6 weeks at least. Yeah. I mean, 3 months would be ideal, but usually, like I said, it takes me about a month to get in the flow. And so that month I'm usually like juggling commissions and then like playing and planning the next collection. I don't remember what we were talking about.
We were talking about social media posts. You say you do about 30 and it does better if you hit about that number. And then if you start emailing 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time. What do you do one a week, right?
No. I wish.
Not when you're releasing?
When I'm releasing, I try to send one at the beginning when I'm like, hey, this is what's happening next. Last year, I was better about, I would send one like 2 weeks before. So it worked really great this one time when I actually did what I wanted to do, which was I created a blog post. Like the work I was releasing was on paper. So I created a blog post about framing. I did my like real big newsletter, sign up for my mailing list push 3 weeks before the collection. And at the end of that, I sent out the blog post to my email list.
I remember that blog post. I need to go look that up.
About framing. And so then in the DMs on Instagram, the people that were like, talking to me, I would say, hey, did you sign up for the mailing list? Like you should have gotten an email yesterday about framing. And a few of them were like, oh no, it went to my spam or whatever. So like they were able to fix it before the collection launch day because I sent an email like 2 weeks before. Anyway.
Yeah.
So that was ideal. But I certainly don't do that every time. Email is definitely somewhere where I could step it up. I don't do enough.
Well, you can't be perfect everywhere.
My assistant wants more hours. I was like, okay, that would be emails. Like, you can help me with actually doing that. And I think
I'm sure you have a lot of stuff you could repurpose too.
Yeah. Well, and I haven't blogged in a year. I mean, like I think that was the last time I blog like once a year. So we could up that too.
Okay. Last question. And then we'll go have kitty time. What advice do you have for someone who isn't sure that they can make it to their next level? Whether that's 6 figures or whether that's $1,500 a month or whether that's $100 a month, whatever it is.
I'm big on goal setting. I remember for years my goal was $400 a month. And then for years it was $800 a month. I don't remember anything in between there. And then it was $1,600 or like, whatever. Like I think it's good to have a goal and to be aware of your goals. But my income, even though I did hit 6 figures last year and might this year too, it's pretty inconsistent. Like I have months where I make $2,200 or $2,500, and it's literally just like finishing up 2 commissions and they both pay me the second half of the payment. And then like when I have a collection launch, like if I have a collection launch and a show, those months will be like 16,000. And the month before that is always really low because I'm like making the work.
You're cranking it out.
Yeah. So,
and I think that's probably even though I talk about consistent income, in my mind, having a $2,000 month and then a $16,000 month, that equals an $8,000 average.
Right.
I don't think that most models of selling art are going to get you the exact same amount of money every single month.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some places where you can get consistent with it, but if you're like doing collection releases and shows and outdoor shows, it's going to go up and down. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm planning for that.
Well, and like when I say now my low month is 2,200, like I remember just a couple of years ago, I had a couple low months that were like $400 or one month, like literally once I added my expenses up, it was like I was in the red, but then I made up for it the other month. Another piece of advice I would say, so a few years back, I was at a creative conference and they were talking about like your big North Star dream. What is it that you really want? And at the time, and still really, I wanted to sell big paintings and have them in beautiful homes.
Yeah.
And when I did my books that year, because I'm really bad about not doing any of my bookkeeping until like January from the whole year before. Gotten a little better, but still not great. When I did my books, I took some time to do more calculations that I had never done before, which was like dividing it into like how many big paintings did I sell and how much did that make me and how many medium paintings did I sell and smalls and works on paper. And then last year I added prints, so that was another column. And then what was the average sale price of those 3 or 4 columns? And that was really helpful. But way back then, what I realized was what I wanted to sell was big work. And I had only sold maybe 4 or 5 big pieces that year, but I had only made 4 or 5 big pieces. And it was like this aha moment of, okay, I've got to stop putting so much pressure on if I'm making a big piece. And I still to this day, if I have a big panel, I put it off for a little longer because I'm like, okay, I really want it to be good. I really want it to be like something that someone's going to love or something. Whereas my small stuff, I feel the more freedom to play because I'm like, I don't know. I know it'll sell because it's easy, like a smaller price point. But I realized I needed to make more big painting. If I wanted to sell big paintings, I need to make more big paintings because
can't sell them if they're not there.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if I wanted to sell 12, I needed to make 20. And that next year, I did sell a lot more big pieces because at the time I was more intentional about making sure to create big work. And yeah, some of those hung out with me for longer. I drug them to 6 or 7 shows and then they would eventually find, yeah.
That's a really big issue that I come across with people a lot is, well, I really want to do this, but I can't do it yet. I have to, and I'm not saying that's necessarily what you did, but I have to play down here because for whatever reason, I'm not good enough. I can't do it yet. There's all these reasons why I can't because.
Right.
And I feel like 90% of getting what you want is clearing out the I can't because and just saying, I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then making it work, because it will work if that's where you are putting your intention and your focus.
Well, and if
So
it's
I love
big,
the use of that.
if it's big work, like literal big paintings, it's a lot to figure out. Like, and no one, like, an artist one time told me, like, oh, I always bring one really giant piece to a show. I don't ever expect to sell it at the show, but it leads people into my booth and it starts conversations about custom work. And I thought that's brilliant, because if people can't see the large scale, where like some people might be able to be like, could you make me something huge that's like this? But you've got to be able to show them. Like, even one time in one of my portfolio reviews, an artist was like, I really want to make like really big pieces and work with interior designers. I was like, well, then you got to make some big work, because even an interior designer who's a visionary doesn't know what your large work looks like if you've never made any. And I can't tell you how many times someone has liked a small piece and wanted a commission of a big piece. And it is such a puzzle to figure out like how to go from small to big on something very specific like that. But if you do it for yourself, okay, how do I make my work bigger? Well, for me, I have to use bigger brushes and bigger, like I can't use the same materials. And so you have to be able to figure that out before you try to pitch those big pieces to anybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I just bought a house today, but I've been looking at houses for a couple of months now. And even though I can see things that probably a lot of non-creative people can't see, the houses that had the furnishings in them that were, already set up so you could see what it might feel like to live there are so much different than the ones that were blank or were full of junk. And so just helping people to feel what it's going to feel like, see what it's going to look like, it's going to make a huge shift for you compared to just, oh, well, you can see it, right? You give me $8,000.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't really work.
Even on Instagram, so many times when I start a conversation with, especially another artist, I'll go check out their account. And so many times their account is literal painting. It's like full squares, full color, no wall space, no change in the depth of field. If this is in a big room, or this is like the painting from the side, or the painting from like across the room, or the painting next to another painting. Like, I think just varying so that you give people, like you were just saying, like a vision of like more of a vision of the work. The other thing years ago I didn't mention, I realized for my work, like I have to include a really nice detail photo because I play up the embroidery. Like that's part of my artistic voice. So like I have to include a really nice detail photo. So I always have the frontal photo, a side photo, a detail like texture photo. And then if I'm offering frames, I have to show it framed. And then having a piece like in a room, or even just if you have a really nice dresser or something in your studio that you can always prop the paintings on, back up a bit, put flowers next to it or a plant or something, it just gives people, like if you think about it, if you're going to spend $600 on a painting or $1,400 on a painting, you're looking at it on the computer, you're going to want 4 or 5 photos and angles of that piece so that you feel like you know what you're getting.
Exactly. Before you get shipped to your house and you're like, this is not exactly what I wanted. And that's even a bigger mess. So it's almost like a customer service thing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And for like when I do minis, I don't do that many photos, but I used to. you know, for a while you've got to show, I don't know. That's how you show you're legit, not that you're in a gallery or.
Well, and you also mentioned that you like to have at least 30 Instagram posts. That gives you, I mean, you're also making 30 pieces for your collection, but for those who are making smaller collections, that gives you more ways to play with the same work, which I think is really great to showcase things more than once. So it's not just, oh yeah, I made a post about it, nobody bought it. It's more of a, like you were talking about, I'm gonna talk about it, I'm gonna talk about it some more, I'm gonna talk about it some more, not just those 6 or 7 Instagram posts and wonder why people aren't buying it.
Yeah, yeah, and organize, like the like individual hashtag thing is maybe, I know when hashtags first started, I was like, this is so annoying, but it helps organize it for you. Honestly, like I like going to the hashtag myself and being like, oh my gosh, I haven't posted one photo of this piece. So that'll be my next post. I can see how many posts were about, like, you know, if each painting needs 2 or 3 posts, maybe not for all the minis, you can have a post where they're together, but yeah, it like, I went and looked for a collection that I remembered from an artist, and I literally couldn't find it in her feed anywhere. And she had mentioned it once. And you don't want that, you know?
No, but at the same time, this is all advice considering we're trying to sell from Instagram. If and from your content on Instagram. And that's one really specific way to market yourself. And that's great. And you absolutely can do that. And there's otherwise, maybe they have all theirs put out locally and they're selling it that way, or they're going to shows like you. So there's lots of different ways to do it.
Absolutely.
But if you are trying to sell through Instagram, you need to have a strategy where you're putting yourself out there quite a bit.
Yeah. And now you got to do videos.
And now you got to do videos. Yeah. Which at first I was like, oh, I don't want to do video. And I was like, wait a minute, I like video. I could do video. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
So,
well, like most new things, I'm a granny at first, and I'm like, I remember when stories came out, I was like, oh my gosh, one more thing to do. And then I started to really enjoy stories. And so many of my Instagram posts and reels just like totally bomb. So I'm kind of like, okay, I got to just keep going. Like, just
a great job in your posts and in your stories. I don't know that I've seen that many reels from you, but I haven't been on Instagram a whole lot lately. Because I've been making videos.
Well, I think, you know, it's easy to overthink reels and think it has to be fancy or whatever. But if it's short and sweet with a really small caption and like more like stories, you know, you want your post to be intentional, but sometimes you've got to go ahead and post it and move on with your day and not put so much pressure on. Okay, just a minute.
All right. Well, you've got a lot going on. You answered all my questions. I can let you go. You've got stuff to do. But I did want to tell everyone, in case they are not familiar with you, where to find you, how to sign up for your newsletter, your Instagram handle. It's
Deeann Rieves.
Right? I'll put a link.
Yeah.
And your website is the same, right? www.deeannrieves.com.
That's right.
You can sign up for her mailing list if you're curious what she sends out. Definitely follow her on Instagram because she is a big shiny light over there.
I try. I try.
Yeah.
All you can do.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Deeann, for indulging me and everyone who is so curious. I know behind the scenes, how does it work? Now you know.
Yes.
All
well,
right.
thanks for having
have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
You're so welcome.